Thank you, everybody, for joining us today to the VictoryXR HTC Vive and Qualcomm webinar on XR education. We're going to be covering a handful of slides today, and we're going to be talking about, these are the things that we'll cover today. First of all, we're going to cover the basics, and the basics include things that some of you may be very familiar with, especially if you are deeply embedded into the VR, AR, XR industry, but a lot of people aren't. So we're going to cover those: 3DoF versus 6DoF, asynchronous versus synchronous, tethered versus untethered. We'll look at the PwC study. Troy is going to talk about the Vive outlook, and we'll both be covering the bundle. And then we're fortunate to have Qualcomm here talking about chip tech. So let's go ahead and get started. So in virtual reality, we see people with these headsets on, and there's a lot of different headsets out there. But no matter what headset we're talking about, one of the first things you have to look at when acquiring VR headset, or as a lot of people call it, goggle technology, is whether it's a 3DoF or 6DoF headset. Now, DoF simply stands for degrees of freedom. And so the best way to understand this is 3DoF allows you to look up, look down, look to the left or right, whereas 6DoF allows you to look at the true 3D world. So in other words, you can not only look up and down and left and right, but you can move around the space. So for example, if you look at the car on your left, you can see that it is tethered to rails. So that car can only go where those rails go. And that's essentially 3DoF. With 6DoF, you have the freedom to move wherever you choose. And that's the beauty of it. So for example, if you are engaging with a human heart, you can step inside that human heart. And that makes a big difference. Let's talk next about synchronous versus asynchronous. So asynchronous is most VR content that you see today, right? So a student puts on a headset and they may download a product from the Vive store or some other store and engage in either a game or an educational experience. And it's a solo experience. They're in there by themselves. You know, it can be frequently graphically more robust, and it can be either 3DoF or 6DoF content. And frankly, it could be a 360 virtual reality video, or it could be a completely created world or a completely created graphic. In the synchronous world, it's group learning. So it's just as in the world of multiplayer games, this is multi-student learning. So in other words, you might have a professor or a teacher in the classroom, and all of the students are together. So synchronous is really the future of learning in virtual reality, because geography is suddenly no longer a limiter. So let's say that you've got a great math teacher in Singapore, or you've got a great biology teacher in Chicago. Students can join that class, can be live with the best teachers in the world or the best professors, or for example, with remote learning at colleges. I think we have Dr. Morris with us from Morehouse College today. And Dr. Morris has taught a class that we'll talk about in just a minute in virtual reality with her students. And the photo you see here on the screen under Synchronous, that's actually Morehouse College students on the Morehouse College digital twin campus. And you can use a VR headset or a PC. So let's talk about the Morehouse College example. This spring, they taught their first 3 classes: inorganic chemistry, which was Dr. Morris, world history, and biology. Professors Morris, Hamilton, and Vreen pioneered the way to teach in this group synchronous classroom. And there was a lot to figure out, but they worked through and figured these things out in this virtual reality environment. And the big difference was their students were able to engage directly with their professor. They were able to ask live questions. They were able to break up into small groups and and work on projects. So the teaching methods that were able to be used and engaged with were kinesthetic, right? Learning by doing. Second, lecture. So even though they're in this environment, the professors still stood in front of the class and lectured and taught. And then third, gamification. And so we're gonna take a look at this video, and this shows the three professors teaching different classes. Hang on.
And if you find it, you get an extra point.
And so war is escalated, and so the powers in Europe escalated.
Students building molecules in Dr. Morris' class. Here's the gamification. This is a maze cave for Biology 105.
It's effective for weight loss and then good for your body to adapt to.
Turn to Westphalia. The campaign was already beginning to expose serious flaws in Napoleon's plan.
Some sperms get trapped by the cilia and die. Only a few of the original 300 million sperms have survived and managed to reach the egg cell.
So we're going to come back to more slides a little later, but I want to turn it over to Vive to talk about their new headset, but also the role that they're playing in advancing education in VR. So I want to introduce you to Troy Woods, and Troy is our senior level manager of communications at HTC Vive, and really is one of the people that has worked most closely with us to put together the education bundle with Vive. So Troy, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for that intro, Steve. So yeah, Vive is excited to be working in the education space. We can go to the next slide, and you can see what we've been working on for the last few years. So we chiefly work with enterprises, businesses, large organizations to help to consult and to power the VR experiences for them. And so it crosses all sorts of different industries, all types of different use cases, but we've seen training and collaboration emerge as a consistent use case across a lot of these different businesses. And so that, along with remote collaboration, has led us into the education realm. And so we're pleased to be partnering with VictoryXR on a content bundle with the Vive Focus Plus. Could you switch to the next slide, please? So we have a bundle for sale right now through Bytespeed, and it comes with 30 modules that are preloaded that are through VictoryXR, and then has some curriculum supplements with NGSS materials. Next slide. The Focus Plus, it's easy to get in and out of, easy to clean. It's a self-contained unit, meaning it has all the inside-out tracking. You don't need base stations in the corner of the rooms. Has the controllers with the cameras, and so you can just take it on and off, and has strong resolution as well. And this is a little promo video we did on the content modules that ship with that headset. Steve. And so you saw mentioned in that video that we have a thing called Kiosk Mode. We've basically created a bunch of different software and firmware features that make it easy to get started in moments. It's important in a learning environment to be able to get in and out of VR quickly. We have pass-through cameras that help the user maintain environmental awareness. So when you put the headset on, you're not just immediately in the virtual world, you still can see the real world while you set up the experience. We have interactive tutorials that basically allow you to do fast room setup, and you can also launch directly into the applications that you want your students to be experiencing. Kiosk mode is basically where you can lock the headset to only focus on one application or a curated suite of applications so that your students are going through a predetermined set of content. And then when they're done with it, they just hit restart kiosk mode and all of those apps go back to the default settings for the next user to join in. You can also record your experience inside of the VR environment. You can do a snapshot and upload it quickly. You can record the experience so that a teacher can be viewing it on a 2D screen or participating in the virtual environment with you. You can also cast that image or video in real time to other students so that they can see, what's going on in the experience while you're demonstrating it to them. And we recently announced a new headset coming out in partnership with Qualcomm. It's the Vive Focus 3. This is an all-in-one device, self-contained unit. We can switch forward, please. This is the view of the headset. Next slide. And in all of this, I mean, we've been hearing about VR as a group. I'm sure all of us have been hearing about VR for a couple of years at least now, and it always comes down to, okay, like, how do I actually roll it out? How do I manage the content? How do I update the devices when there's dozens of them in my organization? How do I do that remotely? And so there's generally three roles at each customer that actually engage with the rolling out and applying the VR technology. So we have the digital experience leaders. These are folks, I'm sure many of whom are represented on the call, where you're vetting new technology for your organization, and you need versatility, ease of use, universality. Needs to be able to work with all sorts of applications and be easy. There's the IT administrators whose job it is to manage the headsets and to integrate them with your existing systems, behind your firewall, behind your existing, single sign-on. You need it to work with your mobile device management platforms. And then we have the VR facilitators. In this case, it would be the instructors who need the VR sessions to run smoothly, to work every time, and be able to have the headsets be easy on, easy off, easy to clean, and then also super immersive. And so we've met those needs with a combination of hardware, firmware, software. And so on the next couple slides, we'll talk about deployment management, service and warranty, and hardware and software. For the Focus 3, we see that as delivering best results, easy execution, fast deployment. And one of the special features of the Vive Focus 3 is that it's powered by the Qualcomm Snapdragon XR2. And so, next slide, I think that gives a good lead in to Tafik, who will talk a bit about what Qualcomm sees as on the horizon for the space. Tafik?
Hey, before we go to Tafik, let me let me introduce him and just say that, first of all, Troy, thank you. And the XR2 is really a groundbreaking chip. There's nothing that rivals it anywhere in the world. And that's why every single major VR headset has one of the Qualcomm chips in it. Some of them are fortunate enough to have the XR2, others have older generation chips, but it is revolutionizing what we can do in the spatial world. So with that, Taufik Jalil is he's the program manager, the director, and right now his focus is on all things XR, AR and VR at Qualcomm. So this is the guy who is working with the world's largest companies that are pioneering new ground in AR and VR. So we're fortunate to have Taufik with us. Go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Troy. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, since I assume we have people from all over the world. Go ahead and switch to next slide, Steve. Yeah, my name is Taufik. I'm a hybrid between a product and program manager at Qualcomm within our business unit. I'm responsible for our enterprise initiatives as well as some other initiatives within the company. But I'd like you to quickly just take a look at this slide. I like to lead this presentation with this slide because it's really a vision of where we want to be a few years from now. We're not there yet, but this is where we want to be a few years from now. So for a second, just imagine being, a world where students, educators, professionals are all collaborating remotely. In this particular slide, what you're seeing is potentially a student working with other students that might be somewhere else in the world. Collaborating on a 3D model of a jet engine. This could be a mechanical engineering class, but just imagine for a second again that you're wearing very light form factor glasses. There are no wires between the glasses and the world. They're wirelessly connected either via 5G network or some type of Wi-Fi technology to a laptop or a smartphone. And again, this is where we think and where we want to lead the XR world into a few years from now. Thanks, Steve. Go ahead and next slide. So I'm going to spend a couple of seconds on this slide here. Just very quickly, for many of you, if you know about Qualcomm, we're very synonymous with smartphones, but we're also, our technology, our chipsets are in many, many other, devices, anywhere from IoT devices to, automobiles, to quite a few things. And of course, in the context of this presentation, in a majority of the XR, both VR and AR headsets out there. What you see here is, we started really early in XR. We've been investing in XR for over 10 years now, investing by both developing technology, but again, implementing that technology onto chipsets that can then be taken and deployed by, OEMs such as HTC, and then used by, I would say platform providers with a company such as VictoryXR, and then eventually end up in the hands of educators and students and the panelists. And so think about it that way. We've been investing there. What you can see here, obviously, as Troy was mentioning, HTC launched the Focus 3. We're also looking at AR headsets, and we'll talk about that in a second. Next slide, Steve. Again, just to provide a bit of context. So Qualcomm, at the moment, our Snapdragon XR chipsets are powering over 45 of the major OEM devices that are launched currently within XR. And that includes both, all-in-one VR headsets, all-in-one AR headsets, as well as tethered viewers, which is really what where we think the industry will go on a few years from now. That is, small form factor, glasses that are tethered either via USB cable or wirelessly to a smartphone or to some other computing device. In some instances, you could be tethered to a server in the cloud doing some remote rendering, and we can, I can answer some questions about that later. Thanks, Steve. Next slide. All right, this slide is a little bit busy, but the purpose of this slide is really to show you what we're trying to do in this space. So if you think about it, we spend a lot of time developing technology. We then take that technology and implement it on chipsets. Those chipsets are eventually put into headsets by OEMs, what you can see to the left, along with technology or different modules from some component technology vendors. And then eventually those headsets are used by end users, users such as yourselves, educators, students, using a solution from a company just like VictoryXR. Now, if you think about that, we Qualcomm are so far away from the end user that it makes it really difficult for us to truly understand the use case, to truly understand what are your needs as educators, as students, what are the OEM needs, what are enterprise solution provider needs. So what we have done is we have created multiple programs within the company. Those programs are usually aligned with a particular vertical. In this particular case, and for the context of this conversation, we have a program called GXR Enterprise Program. In this program, we have onboarded multiple enterprise solution providers. As a matter of fact, Steve and VictoryXR are one of our initial members, and we have done quite a few initiatives along with Steve. And what this has done for us is really enable us to get really close to the end user, really get close to the use case, and truly understand the needs. And if you will, this really completes the loop. So again, we create a technology, we implement that in a chipset, that chipset gets implemented in a headset, that headset gets used by an end user using a solution from a company just like VictoryXR, and then we want to get that feedback right back and continue evolving the technology. As you know, XR is pretty young in its current form, in its untethered form. So all of us learning together will eventually end up leading us to that first slide with that vision, but that will take all of us working together and coming with that. Okay, on this slide here, really this is for some that might not be aware, a lot of people associate XR with gaming entertainment, but really XR is huge in enterprise. And what you can see here is a few verticals, a few use cases that are being used, right? Education here, remote expert, guided work instructions. These two use cases have grown dramatically during the pandemic with people being remote, holographic telepresence, where, two users might be collaborating remotely, inspection, and of course, training. Next slide, Steve. And then last but not least, so over the past couple of years, as I mentioned earlier with VictoryXR, part of our XR Enterprise program, we have tried to get involved in multiple initiatives with Steve. A couple of them would be, as an example, the work we have done together with Morehouse College, which Steve talked about a little bit earlier. We're very proud of that. We're also doing additional initiatives, trialing different headsets with American High School. And again, the goal here is for us, for Qualcomm, to learn and understand the requirements again from the end user and bringing that right back onto our products. And then last but not least, maybe very quick, this is our XR Enterprise program. This is a program we have created a few years back. As I mentioned earlier, the goal is to bring in enterprise solution providers into the program, work very closely with these enterprise solution providers. We provide some benefit. It's a program that's free to join. If you're an enterprise solution provider, there is a link that you can click on the slide. We can share that through the chat, and then we'll be glad to have you join the program. Thanks, Steve. I think that was it.
Thanks, Tawfiq. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
There we go. Thank you. So we have just a few more slides, and then we're going to open it up to questions and have a discussion. But I also wanted to thank HTC Vive, because they are giving away to somebody who registered for this webinar a Vive 3, Vive Focus 3. And this is an amazing headset. You saw some slides on it earlier, but if you just Google the reviews on it around the internet, you'll see that it's really a top of the line untethered headset. And the difference between tethered headsets and untethered headsets is that with tethered, you have a cable that runs from the headset to a computer that's got a very strong graphics chip in it. and those are great. They're more expensive. You're going to have more detailed graphics for the time being in most cases. But in the case of untethered, which gives the freedom to move around and not to have that cable running to a computer and relieves us from the cost of the expensive graphics computer, that's what we have with the Vive 3 and other untethered headsets. And it's really, if you look at sales over the last 12 months, 18 months of headsets, you'll see that untethered headsets have pretty much taken over the market for virtual reality headsets, and for good reason. So let's talk a little bit more about education and how it's being deployed in classrooms, not just in the United States, but around the world. So in this slide, you see Wendy Martin. She was a national finalist teacher of the year. And she is the one who pioneers our work in biology, in particular dissection. So Carolina Biological, if any of you are science teachers, you would know that name. Carolina Biological is the world's leader in dissection curriculum. And so they provide the curriculum and work as a resource with Wendy Martin, the science teacher. And so she's put together different ways of learning. So as we all know, if we're going to begin using virtual reality in the classroom, we have to find the right use cases. Otherwise, administrators and others aren't going to approve the funding for it. And it might be cool, but really, why do it unless there's a good use case? In this particular instance, the use case is pretty obvious. So you can use real animals in dissection, and in many cases that might be the best use if you're in medical school or whatever the case might be. But in virtual reality, obviously, it's reusable. It is something that can be just as detailed, and for students or states that allow students to opt out of dissecting real animals, this is a perfect use. And the fact that it can be used on an untethered headset and that it is preloaded in that Vive bundle makes it a really good use case, and it cuts costs for the administrator. So if the administrator looks at what their budget is annually in a high school, in an American high school, or maybe some high schools around the world for acquiring these specimens, it's an obvious savings, and it justifies. So if you're looking for ways to approach your administration about that, that's one way to do it. This is a short video on Rome Reborn. So also in that Vive bundle is some history lessons, and so what our friends at Rome Reborn have done is they have meticulously gone through and recreated the various architectural buildings and spaces in old Rome. And so we're just going to take a quick look at this. I'm going to pause it there, but sometimes I look at how students today get to learn, and I'm sort of jealous. When you learn about your ancient history, whether it's Rome or different locations, we're rolling out La Amistad, the slave ship, soon. Students get to experience history in ways that most of us never got to. Some of us learn through books, some of us learn through videos. But today, students actually get to stand in those locations, and this is also part of that bundle. So we covered tethered versus untethered, but the bottom line is that you can see on the left, you've got the Vive, and you've got that cable that runs out of that, and that's going to a computer. On the right, you just simply have no cable whatsoever. And so tethered can work on 3 DOF and 6 DOF content. This untethered headset is a 6 DOF headset, so you're getting the sort of the premium experience. This is just a quick slide. We're not going to walk through this, but if you're curious about it, we would love to talk more with you about it, and Bytespeed would love to visit more with you about it as well. So Renee Gedalia is our curriculum specialist, and she's the one that oversees what is put into the content. So the content is not simply put together by coders or computer programmers. It's put together by educators, and that's an important piece of it. Each piece of content in the Vive bundle comes with a 1-page teacher support sheet, and it covers everything that a person needs to know. You know, what's the content in there? What are the topics that are covered? What are the answers to the quizzes and assessments within that content? What are the vocabulary words? Like this one has disarticulation, microprocessor, myoelectric. So what are the vocabulary words? So it makes it easy for the educator. And then it even has a little piece on related STEM careers that could be a part of the discussion. So it's a premium education product more than a code product. The big question that we always get, and you might also get, so let's say that you take this to an administrator and say, I'd like to introduce XR technology into the classroom. And ultimately people ask, well, does it work? You know, is this just another technology fad? Is this going to be technology or hardware that sits in a closet? And we hear this a lot. And so this is a big study that PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, released last summer. And we're just pulling out 2 slides from it, but I would encourage you to either contact us for a copy of this study or just Google it yourself and you'll find it. But in this slide, what they did was they tested how long it took for students to competently learn a piece of content. And in classroom learning, it took the students 2 hours. A lot of distractions, obviously, looking out the windows, talking to friends. In e-learning, it took them 45 minutes. So that was a very significant improvement. But in virtual reality, it was 29 minutes. And if you think about it, it's sort of obvious. When you're in a virtual reality headset, you are distraction free. You're not looking at your phone. You're not talking to others unless they are in VR as well. And so it's a very efficient way to learn, and students remember it. And one of the reasons they remember it is because of the emotional attachment to the learned material. So what they did was they measured the average emotional connection to the material that was learned. And so classroom learning was on this scale 4.29, e-learning was 5.29, but virtual reality was almost 4x more than e-learning. So if you think about that, let's say you're learning history, and let's say, you know, one of the experiences we're working on is the African-American journey. And it's one thing to read about slavery. It's another thing to be there and to experience it. Or it's one thing to learn about a human heart and the ventricles and cavities, but it's a dramatically different experience to hold a human heart in your hand and then to expand it until it's 7 foot tall and to step inside the human heart as your anatomy teacher explains how it works and why it's important to avoid fatty foods to protect it. This is an emotional connection that leads to students retaining more information. There's over 71 studies that show the efficacy of learning in virtual reality. And to me, it's such an obvious thing, but if you're in education, you need to be able to see that this matters and that it works. And so we will also be happy to provide you with that information. We just throw this little point of bragging. We love HTC Vive. They gave us the award for the best international VR education, and that's why they've included us in their headsets as well. So we're not going to watch that video, but just know it's a good one.
Welcome to the
I'm
virtual
not going to
lab.
watch it. Moving on. So I'm going to exit out of here at this point. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to go to questions. And I know we have quite a few questions here. So
Hey, Steve, as an FYI, I've answered a couple. I don't know if we also want to go over those. I just was trying to get this move a bit as well.
perfect. Thank you. So let me just start from the bottom. How do you actually load the content to the headsets and manage them remotely? So the great thing is that when Troy and his team send you a Vive bundle headset, it comes with 30 different learning experiences preloaded. So that's pretty cool. And that's yours forever. There's no recurring subscription fees. You just have those. So if you buy a bundle of headsets, then it comes with the information. Having said that, there are also options to preload information, to actually not preload, to load new experiences and content. And because these are 6-off headsets, you can join there's a number of different synchronous platforms, be it AltSpace or Horizon or our own VictoryXR Academy on the Engage platform. You can join these learning campuses and classrooms, and that headset will work for it. A 3-DOF headset works very poorly, if at all, in a synchronous classroom learning environment, but a 6-DOF headset does a great job. And anything else? So am I missing the questions?
Yeah, they are in the Q&A section, Steve.
Oh, there it is. I see it. Yep. Okay. Bartosz, using VR in higher ed, I'm constantly worried about those few cases where size of students' glasses, vision defect, or susceptibility to sim sickness makes it impossible to use VR. What are your experiences and how have you dealt with it with such students? So I'll just give a brief answer to that. But I would actually like Dr. Morris, if she's on, to talk about her experience with her students at Morehouse College. Dr. Morris, are you on, and can you reflect on the experience your students had with having headsets on? Ty, if we can unmute, okay, let's see if I see you have raised your hand. So let me see if I can figure this out. So if you can help me with that, Ty, that would be helpful. If you can unmute.
Yeah, I just promoted
Dr.
her to a panelist.
Okay, Dr. Morris, can you talk about that in relation to your inorganic chemistry class at Morehouse, how the students reacted to the headsets and anything you had to do there?
So good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Messina Morris, and I taught my advanced inorganic chemistry course at Morehouse College, and it was quite interesting. VictoryXR has a wonderful team that will help you get set up with. We still had to have our students play in the headsets a lot to build up their VR stamina. So my first experience, Danny Coyle, when we were learning how to use the Oculus Quest 2, was that I got a little motion sickness, and everyone usually does, but we didn't have students opt out of doing VR because of it though. All of our students decided that they were okay with it. We had a couple students in the first, I think, lesson that may have gone over and out the modality itself that kind of needed to take a break, but we didn't have any real issues where they decided to opt out. We did offer that as an option, so you didn't have to take the course in virtual reality if it was going to cause you any kind of medical sickness, or they just didn't want to. Because we were piloting it, we wanted to see what students really wanted, and most students engaged well with it. And even our students that wore glasses didn't have any issues. They felt like the headset was comfortable and they were able to focus and still see well in the headset. So it was a wonderful experience for us, especially during the pandemic.
And Messina, you gave them the option of using the PC in the class rather than the headset, but nobody opted for that because it worked well enough.
Right. Nobody opted for it at all.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you, Dr. Morris, for and really for pioneering this. You know, if for anyone who needs a speaker, you know, I would encourage you to reach out to Dr. Morris, because she knows what she's talking about firsthand, and her students really. I think the end of semester evaluation showed that it was a very positive experience.
Yes, and we're doing it all over again in the fall with students. I'm doing it in my analytical and general chemistry courses because that's what I teach in the fall. And some of the modules that were created overlapped with the advanced and organic, some of the structural things, some of the molecular things. And so our students will be working like that. We also do some cross-disciplinary work. So we have teachers in Dr. Tanya Clark that was a part of our team. They came into our classroom and talked about Henrietta Lacks in literature and how we can look at just different things in chemistry and in biology from a literature perspective. And we had Dr. Ovell Hamilton in history. So we're all going to be teaching different courses this upcoming fall. And we have a new cohort, a couple of other colleagues that are coming on board to teach some other things, in which we would be doing some cross-disciplinary work in sociology and chemistry as well. And so it's going to be a great experience. And this headset allows us to do coming back to face-to-face. What's so important about being able to have the option of doing it in VR is we don't have to worry about spacing issues in lab. We don't have to worry about still trying to social distance, still trying to make sure that everyone is safe. Just get in the headsets and everybody can be together and do the same kind of work. So it's really an awesome experience if you would like to engage in it. And I would be happy to speak about my experiences, some pitfalls and some lessons learned too along the way.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. We hang on because we may have more questions for you in a bit. Troy, this next one's for you from Roger, asking about the WLAN adapter, if it's going to be available for the HTC Vive devices and if it will deliver the full resolution.
Great. Hey, I have Dave Myers from our product team on. Dave, if you'd like to unmute and answer that question.
Yeah,
please.
absolutely. So the Focus 3 is going to support both wireless and tethered streaming, remote rendering with a PC. It won't be at full resolution since the wireless networks and even cabling that can tether the device wouldn't support that type of throughput. So you can get up to the 2048 by 2048 per eye on the wireless streaming and also tethered with a USB-C cable.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Let's go to Rick Castile. Seems part of the groundwork that will be needed is teaching teachers how to create curriculum for VR. What is the thought for their students? So I can address this from our standpoint, and I'm sure other companies may have different approaches, but we have a 10-step process. So we start with some YouTube videos, and our YouTube videos, once they get through those, there's 4 or 5 of those for them to watch. And then we have 3 live classes, and level 1, level 2, level 3, and our curriculum specialist, Renee Gedalia, might be expanding that, but they need to attend those 3 classes. And then finally, we have some spatially pre-recorded lessons. So all of this gets them to a few different things. One, we're not teaching them how to teach. They already know how to teach. We just need to educate them on how to port their content from an atom-based world to a bit-based world. And so, and help them learn the different tools. So for example, we built this amazing maze for the gamification of learning. So how do they create a learning exercise where the students get to enjoy that? And Dr. Morris, would you just speak briefly about your journey in going from an atom-based world into a bit-based world?
You want to know my experience in terms of
your training, your professional development that you went through with Renee and Danny. How was that?
It was seamless. Honestly, Renee and Danny are like, to me, superheroes. They they allowed us to still to have a particular vision that they helped us put together. The training was really, really good. They gave us timelines, and it didn't feel like you were really overwhelmed with the amount of information, even though it was something that you had to ease into technically. So they did it step by step. It was a lot of self-learning too on our parts. You had to be motivated to watch the tutorial videos and to try it out. But overall, the experience was pretty seamless. Like, we were able to do everything that I do plus some, because it's in VR. So my students were able to do more. They were able to enlarge molecules and actually see and rotate and all of that kind of thing that they could not do if they were physically in the lab space. But we were able to engage in our same teaching pedagogies, like group work and facilitating active learning content, students still being able to report back, and you can presentations, so they can then play them back. And so it's a lot of different things that translate over from face-to-face classrooms that we could still do in virtual reality, but just do it better, and you don't have to worry about distractions at all. So I didn't have to worry about students being on their phone. I didn't have to worry about students getting in and out of their seats. So it was really a good experience. And the training is, world-class training from Renee and Danny when it comes to allowing you to envision your classroom in VR.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. Let's move on to Cheryl's question. My question is regarding content creation that meets my specific teaching and training needs. Do universities typically hire someone who can create programs, or are there other resources out there specific to this headset? So I can answer that, and Troy, if you want to jump in, feel free to, but it's done a couple of different ways. So universities will sometimes hire outside organizations to create content. I know we're working on this with a couple of large online universities as we speak. Other times, they will work with their computer science department and have students create, for example, a digital twin campus. And I know part of the program moving forward at Morehouse College is to engage the computer science students in working with Unity Technologies and building out a larger campus and learning to create curriculum with Unity. But I can tell you for the bundle is a K-12 bundle, but on the VictoryXR campus, essentially you put together your own curriculum, because we provide the assets, like, if it's history or science or architecture, whatever you're teaching, we provide the assets for you to teach with. And then you can bring in your own videos, you can bring in your own PDFs and other assets like that. So it actually, for professors, we're training professors across the United States right now, and it usually takes them about 6 to 8 weeks to figure it out the first time, and then they're off and running. And some are better than others, but I think that's the way professors are anyway. And some adapt more quickly to the spatial world, and some don't. So, Troy, anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered it. I should also mention that with the Focus 3 comes the Vive for Business app store, where there's some related and supplemental content that folks can check out.
Roger asks, is the language English, or are other languages supported as well? So most of it is English right now. In the Vive bundle, it's all English. The advantage of a spatial campus is that you're teaching in your own language. So that's helpful there. But I can also tell you that there are organizations that are looking to have the content translated. And Troy, do you want to talk at all about some of you? I know that Vive has some Mandarin language content as well. We don't have it in the United States store, but I know in the China store there is.
Yeah, there's regionalized content for each of the regions that we operate in local languages.
Okay, very good. Stephen Leo asks, has there been any work done with haptic feedback in training education experiences? If yes, how has that affected the experience? If no, has any interest or need to be been shown to add realistic haptics to these experiences? I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and I don't know if Dave or Troy want to also weigh in, but currently there's some basic haptics. So for example, if you touch another person in VR, you get some of vibrating haptic feedback. If you fist bump someone, you feel that, and there's other things that haptic feedback is built into. So there's some options there, but right now it's simply a slight vibration that you feel in the hand controller. As a lot of these headsets begin moving to not use hand controllers, where it's just the hands, that will be more challenging, obviously. But Troy or Dave, do either of you have any thoughts on that question as far as haptic feedback and the experience there?
Yeah, I'll defer to Dave on that if you'd like to cover it.
So nothing that is, I know there's a lot of effort being done on the sidelines, but nothing that I'm aware of that's like a commercially viable product at this point. One experience that I can share that is actually quite eye-opening was my recent work with hand tracking, where there's clearly nothing available from a haptic perspective, but the longer I spent manipulating objects in VR with my hands, I actually started to get this sense of feeling of these objects that I clearly wasn't touching. So it's amazing what the brain will do if you spend enough time manipulating something where it actually creates that sense of interaction, which is quite incredible. But to go back to the original question, again, no, nothing commercial, but I am seeing a lot of kind of experimental projects with different types of feedback for those different use cases.
Yeah, I'll say something real quick. So when we talk haptics, I mean, it could be the vibrating controllers that Steve mentioned, the feeling of, actual tactical touch that Dave's talking about when you're doing hand tracking. It could also be like there's a lot of gloves now that are in the proof of concept stage where it, allows you to feel like you're touching a real object. We also have a product that's, it's called the Vive Tracker, and it's a little puck about yay big. And some folks have been putting that on like real world materials. So a fun version of that is they stuck it on the end of a bat and did like a home run derby sort of thing. So it's a real object, but it's being brought into the virtual environment. And we've seen that same thing happen in the training side. Like with surgical training, they'll put a Vive Tracker onto a surgical implement, whether that's a surgical tool like a needle or scissors or scalpel, that sort of thing. And that basically brings real stuff into the virtual world.
Quick answer to Nearby Planet. We have over 200, probably closer to 250 learning experiences now, history, science, etc., literature. Just a small handful are on the Springboard platform at this point. So yes, there's a lot more content, and we would love to visit with you about that. Adrian, did we use specific Vive technologies like hand or eye tracking? We have not yet. We've experimented with eye tracking. Now, Troy, does the Vive 3, there's two versions of that, one with eye tracking and one without, correct?
So we have, you had mentioned Tethered and Untethered. So we have the Vive Pro 2 is our newest PC powered headset, tethered experience, and the Vive Focus 3 is the all-in-one that we saw. And then the Vive Focus Plus is the one that ships with the bundle. And so for each of those, we have it's a modular design to where with the new generation products, you can add eye tracking functionality to it. It doesn't ship with it. However, we have an existing product called the Vive Pro Eye that has integrated eye tracking.
And the eye tracking is pretty amazing. And there's a lot of very interesting use cases for it in training and education, et cetera. Hey, Tom, Darcy, thank you for always working with us. And thank you for always being such a positive supporter. The lesson plans and standards will continue with these bundles. I don't know that we have those for the Rome Reborn experiences because those are not ours, but with the other 27 of the 30, they come with the teacher support pages. Diego is asking, what's the best way to deploy and manage VR educational content at scale? Troy, I'm going to throw that one over to you, since you're really the one that can talk about the kiosk mode and some of the other.
Yeah, so we are debuting a new interface for the administrator to basically be able to put specific content across all of the devices that they have out in the field, and then update those on a regular basis, you know, as new content becomes available or you want to switch new modules in and out.
Thank you. Anonymous attendee, what role do you see VR arcades playing with education, if any? I actually think this is a huge growth area for VR arcades. You know, having access to very interesting education content. It usually fits within the time period that you're looking for an experience in a VR arcade, or taking a birthday party and turning them loose in the maze as a group of, say, 10, where they come to 10 different gates that allow them to advance through this medieval maze, and each gate has a brain teaser. And those brain teasers are critical thinking questions that allow students to learn and to answer these questions. And once they do, a gate opens and then they can advance past that. So it's a fun way to sell a product, to bring in school groups, homeschool groups, or just parents who want students to have fun at a VR arcade, but also at the same time do something that's beneficial to their mind. Bartosz, is there any specific SDK that allows for making custom synchronous educational experiences for Focus 3, or is the development process the same for any other VR platform? What I would say is the Focus 3 works with, I think, all of the major platforms like Engage, Horizon, AltSpace, et cetera, all of those various platforms. And in any of those, you can go in and create your own content. Or on the VictoryXR campus, you can use our 3,000 learning objects to create your own educational experiences. You record them, you save them in your own library. So for example, Morehouse College is building an entire library of content that can be used in the future for learning. So once Dr. Morris teaches inorganic chemistry, she can go back and teach it again in VR, but she doesn't have to. She can save it in the library. So Morehouse is creating new content all the time, and it's amazing content. So I've seen plenty of it. Allison, the Synchronous option is an additional bundle that is not transferable between users. I am interested in writing a grant for a local library teen learning lab to obtain the Vive 3 bundle headset. Wondering what a biology club might look like using this product. I'm not sure if I completely understand your question, Allison, but I can tell you that obviously we would be happy to work with you in writing the grant. And, you know, we have so much biology content in the bundle, and Ty or Tyler are going to post the list of the content in the either in the Q&A or in the chat, probably in the chat, so you can see it. There's a lot of biology content in there, including dissection as well. So if there's a biology club or a science club, that would be a great solution. Stephen Leo, will the Vive Focus 3 Vive bundle streaming be equivalent to the Vive wireless adapter quality? Are there any limitations to how many Vive Focus 3s I can have on a network on the same location? Well, that sounds like a Dave question or a Troy question, not a Steve question.
Yeah, so starting with the limitation piece, that's really going to come down to just the quality of service that the network, the connected network provides. So unlike the Vive wireless adapter that has 3 specific channels where there would be a limitation, that specific limitation wouldn't exist for the wireless streaming on the Focus 3. But again, kind of depends if you're using a Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E, what your backend looks like. And, you know, there is an option to, with the dual USB-C inputs on the Focus 3 to have a 5G dongle. So you could have a on-premise or mobile edge computing rendering solution for multiple folks in the event that your in-building system didn't have the capability to support multiple devices. So a long way of saying there's a lot of different options for Focus 3 for wireless streaming that kind of improve on the limitation for the wireless adapter that you may have used.
Thank you, Dave. We recently did some testing at a Nashville university to see if 20 headsets could stream live on their system, and it was a big thumbs up. So you can get a lot of headsets streaming on one Wi-Fi system. Tom is asking if one of the panelists can comment on the technology's ability to collect data such as facial, eye, voice, other. We're looking at various areas to integrate AI and advanced analytics such as IBM's Watson. That sounds like that's also a Dave or a Troy question.
Yeah, so for right now, if you wanted to do eye, face, and you know, data collection, so the Vive Pro Eye with the Vive Facial Tracker would give you all that functionality right now. The Focus 3 will, again, with those dual USB-C ports, will allow you to connect those types of devices. Facial Tracker could be one. There, at the moment, there isn't a commercially available snap-in eye tracking accessory, but I know that's something that's being worked on by some of those third-party hardware developers.
Bartosz, thanks for clarifying your question. I know that there is the Wave SDK that Vive has released that allows people to build their own applications, and so if you Google Wave SDK or you reach out to Troy or Dave, they can probably answer more questions on there. There are other SDKs out there as well. So the answer is yes. There's some that are independent of Unity or Unreal, but those are 2 pretty good platforms for building almost anything. We're trying to wrap up here. So Tom's asking Dave regarding the wireless streaming question. You might want to engage in some discussions we're having with Cable Labs if you're not already. So we'll let you follow up with that. I think, did I miss Bertrand's question? Steve, can you go over XR Academy program for teaching educators on using your system? Yeah, Bertrand, I'll just touch on this since we talked about it a little bit earlier, but we have a really slick system right now between YouTube videos, pre-recorded spatial content, and live classes where we train educators, and then others can come into that, or the trainee can then train others. We're more than willing to work either way for that. Jack Zhu, sorry I missed this earlier. What would be the suitable age range to use the device? I'm going to leave that to Troy or Dave on the age range that you're recommending for the Vive.
Dave, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, I answered that one. So it's a common question, but the age range, like the 13 age, is related to the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. It just comes down to different types of advertising and services that could be presented to someone who's under the age of 13. There's no specific definitive guidance on safety and usage of the device yet. So it's primarily related to just that privacy portion of it.
Thank you. Tawfik, last questions for you. What's the future of the form factor, the size and the weight of these headsets for education in XR? What do you see? Where do you see all this going?
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, having looked at that first slide in our vision, we think the best form factor eventually, a few years from now, will be lightest, smallest glasses, augmented reality type of headsets. But I want to back up a little bit from that. So today in education, VR is really important. And why? because it's immersive, right? You know, for some of the use cases in education, you want your student to be fully immersed, right? As an example, in the biology class, or if you're trying to simulate a trip, right? Somebody going to the pyramids, you want them to be fully immersed. You want them to feel and think that they're visiting a pyramid or visiting a museum. So in that case, you want a fully immersive VR headset. But then looking at the future and perhaps looking at a use case where a student is working and along with a teacher in a class, you want to be able to see the teacher, but at the same time be able to see the content. And in that case, augmented reality is a better form factor, and therefore smaller glasses. So, you know, we think, you know, both of those form factors will evolve, of course, to smaller, less tethered type of devices. But depending on the use case, the content, and of course the age, the headsets will change. Another thing we perhaps didn't cover is you know, students with disabilities, right? So as an example, a student that perhaps has ADHD or perhaps is on the autism spectrum, we have seen that VR has been an extremely useful tool in educating those students. You know, having them immersed in a fully contained headset has been a really good way to get the student attention for a lot longer than if they were actually looking at a teacher drawing on a board or reading a story. And again, in that case, a fully immersive headset would be the best form factor. So long answer to your question, but that is it.
Thank you, Tawfiq. So any final remarks before we part ways today? And first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us, Tawfiq and Troy and our surprise guest, Dr. Morris, and of course, Dave from Vive. But anybody have any final comments before we close up today? Okay. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this. There's a lot of potential out there. Those of you who choose to use this technology to teach and to train will find that it's a great tool, and it will be a benefit to those in your care. So thanks so much, and we will make this available through the recording that's available through social media. So thanks so much.